I'm James Gunny Gregory. I'm a retired Marine gunnery sergeant. In 1986, I was a Marine drill instructor in San Diego, MCRD San Diego. And I heard about this Welcome Home Parade in Los Angeles, Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Parade. And I rode my Harley up there. I was the only motorcyclist in the whole parade, which today would sound unbelievable. But literally, I really enjoyed my first Welcome Home Parade to Vietnam veterans. And literally for the first time, people said, welcome home. It's also the first time I started doing what we now call a man hug, and had a lot of that. And while there, I met up with my squad leader from Vietnam. I was in I Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, Marine Corps Infantry, 1969, 1970, served in the I Corps area. Marine Infantry, saw my fair share. But my squad leader and I kept close over the years. He was also kind of my mentor when I first got there, kind of kept me out of trouble. And he was in Los Angeles, and he was going to walk from Los Angeles to his home in Port Angeles, Washington. And I don't know what that is, 1,500, 2,000 miles. And I'm thinking, why are you going to do that? And he's carrying a POW flag, prisoner of war, missing in action. He says, we still got a lot of POWs and missing in action in Vietnam. And I go, oh, come on, Carl, really? I mean, that can't be true. And he goes, man, tomorrow you got to come to this breakfast with me, and I want to introduce you to family members and let you hear their story. And that evening, he and I went to, the first time I went to the miniature moving wall that they had in LA. And he and I, cried, and we talked about those loss. And unfortunately for me, I have a memory block. I remember a lot of stuff about Vietnam, and I remember getting guys in bags and putting them on choppers, but I can't remember the names right. But I also have another problem that in 1975, I was part of the MyQuez rescue. I was the 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines, and our rescue mission was to rescue 32 Americans who were captured by the Khmer Rouge, the Cambodians. Civilian container ship, Vietnam fell in April, about 2 weeks earlier. And here we were going into Cambodia. And although I did not personally land on the island, my Marines did. I was a scout sniper platoon leader, and they didn't want us in there. Actually, our choppers that we were supposed to go in on were shot up and they couldn't fly. So the last of those Marines coming off that island after those 31 Americans were rescued, 3 Marines and a machine gun team in the middle of the night were left behind, live, still fighting. No one knew it until they all got back on the ship. So here I am, fast forward to 1986, and I'm being told that not only were a lot of Americans left behind in Vietnam, but those 3 Marines may very possibly still be in a prison in Cambodia. We didn't know then. So the next morning, I went, and those 3 Marines, I knew their names, I knew their history, I knew their families, I knew Marines served with them. I had helped train them. As a Vietnam veteran in 1975, I was a handful of enlisted men still with combat experience. So in 1986, Carl's got me in this meeting with these family members at breakfast, and I listened to their story. And one of them, the ladies, was this very southern, sweet lady, and Marion Shelton's husband was a colonel in the Air Force, shot down. Well, he was a captain when he was shot down, but he was classified as the last official prisoner of war from Vietnam. And the reason that happened is Marion, when she was told he was dead, she sued the Air Force, and the federal government said, my husband isn't dead till you show me proof he's dead, his remains. Well, they couldn't do that. There were reports he was in China. There were reports that he had been moved along on up, because in his aircraft, he was one of those guys who did a lot of classified work in the back of an airplane. And we think that they were intentionally targeted to be moved northward for their intelligence on how basically to operate American aircraft and American radio and radar systems. But Marion convinced me that her husband was still alive. And I joined her army of POW supporters. I also found out at that meeting that there was a Marine, a guy named Bobby Garwood. And I had heard about him, and I didn't think much about it, but he was a live American Marine who came out of the jungles of Vietnam in 1979. He was court-martialed, and there were all kind of questions, but still, he was a live American in North Vietnam who came back to this country. So the possibility of there being other live Americans was very, very strong. In fact, the probability is very, very strong. So I kind of listened to this story, and then Marion, who happened to live in San Diego where I lived, I met her and her daughter and family members and other family members, and I heard their stories, and they convinced me their men were still over there. And it also convinced me that I needed to go to the wall in Washington, D.C., to the Vietnam Veteran Memorial. And I'll be honest, I didn't really like the wall when it was first built. It's a deep, dark gash in the ground. Memorial is supposed to be high and up in the sky. But like most Americans, I got convinced that this was the way to do it. Those names became very important, names of people I knew. And so I was a leader of in a veteran community. I was a life member of Vietnam Veterans of America, VFW, American Legion. I was also an avid motorcyclist. I've been riding since 1975. So I was a leader of a Beta, California. I was the president of the chairman of the board, local chapter president, been in motorcycling and veteran work for many, many years. And I began to put those two entities together, veterans, motorcyclists. And Marion said, what can you do? Well, in about a year or so, in 1987, I got a letter from these two guys who were starting something called Rolling Thunder. And one of those men was a guy named Ray Manzo. Ray was a machine gunner in Vietnam, Marine, and we instantly bonded, as veterans do, but also, frankly, you know, we're Marines and we had served in some of the same area. And Ray he just convinced me again, we got to do something. We got to make this country wake up. We got to tell the president that we're not going to let these POW MIAs be swept under the rug. So I was still active duty Marine. I put together kind of a scenario. I'd ridden across country. That wasn't that big of a deal. So I decided I was going to go to the wall. And if I'm going to go to the wall from California, I need to go with some other guys, some other folks, some other veterans. So I kind of put the feeler out. About that time, another Vietnam veteran called me up, a guy named Bill Evans, and says, hey, you know, you're a leader in this community and I want to go to the wall. I'd like to do a run. I go, well, shoot, Bill, come on over to the house. We'll talk about it. And that was in like maybe 86, 87, no, 87, 88. And Bill came over and we talked about it. He says, I want to put this thing together. I said, well, man, I've already started this thing. I've got stuff going on. Let's put our brains together and our efforts together. And he says, well, I want to call it Run for the Wall. And I said, sounds like a plan. Sounds as good as anything else. So in 1988, the Marine Corps, in its infinite wisdom, sent me to a safety school in Indiana, at a Navy base in Indiana. Who knew? So I went to the safety school, but I talked my command and let me ride my Harley, and they paid me my mileage, gave me 30 days leave, 2 weeks school, and 6 days travel. I mean, what a beautiful thing. I'm on the road for 6 weeks with the Marine Corps paying for it. And on that route, I traveled what I thought would be a route across country that bikers could do. And I kept in the back of my mind this thing called Run for the Wall. Passed out flyers, went to VFWs, American Legions, Harley Owners Group, anybody who'd listen. And I actually traveled Interstate 10 across parts of Texas and Louisiana, and then I got over to the East Coast and I came back, you know, what was today the Central Route. So that was my first recon. That was in October of 88. By February of 89, I had asked to retire, and I put in my retirement papers and retired. In April of 89, I flew back to Washington, D.C. and met with the leaders of Rolling Thunder in person and all that group, and we had a plan. In May of 89, we left San Diego, and actually I wasn't sure if there was going to be anybody there, to be honest. The night before we left, people came to my house and they literally slept on my front lawn, and we packed up trucks and trailer, and we got ready to leave San Diego the next morning. Marion Shelton was there to see us off. And lo and behold, there's like over 150 riders. And I gotta be honest, I really wasn't sure. There's a lot of folks that said they'd do some stuff, but I wasn't sure they were gonna actually be there. Not only did we have riders, we left from a place called the Vietnam Veterans of San Diego. It was a house. It was part of Stand Down, which I was a part of. And we left San Diego for Las Vegas with 150 riders. And it was pretty weird. the highway patrol got motor cops in front of us, put us way over in the #1 lane and said, you just follow us. And the interstate system wasn't completed through LA yet. So it was after drinking several cups of coffee, it was quite frankly a long ride to Ontario. Trucks of America was just right down the street here. And there they were volunteers there to feed us, to give us gas, and take care of us. And I really did not know on every leg of this trip that the people who said they would volunteer to do something would be there. And lo and behold, every stop, every 100 miles or so, we'd stop and there'd be volunteers. And they would have water and this and that. And it just took me. I couldn't believe there were people willing to come out and do this. And again, the VFW is American Legion's motorcycle rights organization, clubs. And it was just amazing. And on we went across country, on and on. You know, we went over the Colorado Rockies where we got snowed on. I said, well, we're not doing this route again. We dropped down into the plains of America and got in the heat of Kansas and the rough roads. And every town seemed to be even more and more coming out. When we left Las Vegas, we might have had 30 riders, 20 riders. I can't really remember because I was focused on where we were going. And we dropped off a lot of folks in Las Vegas. And that's what Run for the Wall became. You don't have to go all the way. You can do part way, you can do an hour. You know, there are rules about joining up and getting in the pack, but the reality is you're welcome to join this group anywhere and for just an hour or two, a day or two, or literally for the whole 10 days. And that's one thing that I love about Run for the Wall. I think it's only a $40 registration. I paid $40 for a 2-hour ride and a cheap lunch. $40 to go all the way across country and get free food, free gas, and most importantly, the most outstanding family experience you're ever going to get. Run for the Wall was started to try to do something about the POW MIAs, and I think maybe we might have done something, I don't know. But I can tell you this, it created something else. It created a bond, a family. It not only was there to support the veterans that weren't with us, but to support one another. We have created a family nucleus that is like nothing else in America that I understanding. The VA has spent millions of dollars and thousands of hours to try to help people with PTSD. God love them. I've used their system. I go see my psychiatrist at the VA from time to time. But in reality, I've had many, many veterans, and most important, their wives, their children, come to me personally, and I'm just one guy, who have said, my husband, my family member would be dead today if not for Run for the Wall. And I take that very seriously. Run for the Wall in 10 days does more for a lot of veterans than 30 years of drugs and psychotherapy at the VA or wherever. To get out there and do what Run for the Wall does for that 10-day ride, it's just something that you got to do. And frankly, you don't have to be on a motorcycle. You certainly don't have to be a Vietnam vet. We need the young Iraqi and Afghan vets and Cold War vets, or non-vets, just a supporter. I think all the supporters, all the groups, you know, today on Run for the Wall, we got more preachers in the run than I had across country. We got more road guards than we had across country. This is a good thing. I want to thank everyone, especially that leadership. It's a tough, tough job getting 2,000 riders across country. I'm personally kind of glad I'm not in that position. So I really want to thank those folks who were involved. You know, thank you.